Hey guys, and welcome to my Chinese build order. It's finally time to deep dive into the Chinese civilization, and I'm gonna teach you several different build orders in order for you to be able to craft your game plan going forwards. In my first 5 build orders, I had a single playthrough, a single demonstration. This time I'm gonna have 4 build orders for you, and you can find everything about them in the chapters in the video length. So feel free to jump to any of the builds that you're particularly interested in. But I'm gonna be starting with actually explaining how the civilization works, how the Imperial Official works. I'm gonna be going through 4 openers, the economic, defensive, offensive, and water opener. And I also have all the paper build orders in the description below the video player. So if you'd like to have them next to you while you try to play alongside with my instructions, those are there for download for you. So let's talk a little bit about the Chinese civilization. The Chinese civilization has the particular unique selling points. You've got dynasties where if you build not just one, but both landmarks, you can enter a new age. A new age comes with several unique advantages. You start with your scouts having a greater vision radius. If you go to the Song dynasty, you get faster villager production and access to a new unique unit from the archery range, the Zhuge Nu. The Zhuge Nu is a repeater crossbow, but don't be fooled by the weapon name. It doesn't have the normal properties of a crossbow, which does bonus damage to armored targets, heavy targets. It does 4 damage in a burst of 3 shots, 4-4-4, which can be interrupted if you give a new command to the Zhuge Nu, or if it dies. So you have to let it fire all 3 bolts in order to get the full DPS, and only then start to move until your next attack cooldown is available. The Zhuge Nu are especially good into enemy unarmored units, aka enemy archers. They're possibly okay into the horsemen. They get countered by horsemen, but they're much better into horsemen than, for example, the archer itself. And because they have low damage, they will only do 1 damage per hit against anything that has an armor of 3 or more. Even as the Zhuge Nu is upgraded, enemy armor may also be upgraded. And altogether, if something does 1 damage or less than 1, it's 1 damage. But because the Zhuge Nu attacks 3 times, it's able to always do at minimum 1, therefore at minimum 3 damage. That means that they are much better than archers into buildings, rams, cavalry, boats, and so on and so forth. In fact, they attack a little faster than the archer as well, so they're about 3.5 times as good into buildings than the archer, even though that's still not very good. They're best into, like I said, enemy Zhuge Nu, crossbows, archers, decent against horsemen, hand cannoneers, and into spears. However, archers benefit from bonus damage into spears, and Zhuge Nu do not. So that's kind of what you get out of the Song dynasty. The 3rd dynasty, the Yuan dynasty, offers you bonus movement speed for all of your army and your villagers when you build both the astronomical clock tower as well as the imperial palace. And the final dynasty, the Ming dynasty, offers you bonus health for all military units, gains access to the grenadier, which is an archery range unit that has splash damage. Oh, and the Yuan dynasty gives you the fire lancer access, which is a kind of like a horseman with a little bit less health, a little bit less movement speed, but the same factional advantage into archers, the same counter damage into archer type units, enemy ranged units, which actually includes the tower elephant, the camel archer, the archer itself, the crossbow, and so on, if they're a ranged unit. But they have a splash damage upon impact on an 8-second cooldown, or 10-second cooldown, I believe. And this splash damage is significant. Groups of fire lancers can one-shot entire squadrons of armies, and fire lancer is a strong unit in this way. It also has 50 damage into buildings, which is their fire damage, or 45 to 50 damage. So they're great at raiding. So besides being able to age up to a certain age a second time to unlock the dynasty, they've got all those special units. The Nest of Bees is their equivalent of a mangonel. Works a little different, but it's really strong. And then altogether, Chinese villagers construct defenses 50% faster than other civs, and all other buildings twice as fast. So houses, lumber camps, barracks, archery ranges, they all build fast. And that's before you start power building them with several villagers. Chemistry technology, the bonus gunpowder damage, is researched for free once you build the university and advance to the Imperial Age. And docks work 20% faster. That's the Chinese civilization in a nutshell and why they are unique. Now let's talk about one of the most unique things in all. The Imperial Officer. The Imperial Officer is trained from a town center, and it takes just as long to produce as a villager, 20 seconds. But unlike a villager, it costs 150 food instead of 50 food. That means that you can train them in the same time, but you'll be down 100 food after having trained them. So what does the Imperial Official do? The Imperial Official does three things. He can collect taxes from buildings that have had activity. Activity is seen as either producing a unit, finishing a research, or dropping off a resource. Those three are activity. And if a villager brings back any food at all, that is seen as activity. Right now this mill has 0 tax gold. Bringing back 4 food gives it 1 gold. Now the Imperial Official has 1 gold and he brings it back to the town center. He can carry a maximum of 20 gold per trip. If there's multiple buildings that have taxes inside of them, he will go to each one until he's got 20 gold. And he's got automatic tax collection on right now. Anytime someone brings back food, he notices it with a small delay, almost no delay, picks up the gold and then goes back. And you see the little Z, the sleeping, as he picks it up and he parses where he's got to go next. There are taxes now. It also should be noted that there's a 15-second cooldown on collecting gold from buildings. He can only go to the same building every 15 seconds, but he can go to another one. Alright, I'll talk more about automatic tax collection and tax collection later, but that's how it works. So that's a nice way of generating infinite gold that starts in the early game and goes on until the last game. Goes on until the late game. The second thing that the Imperial Official can do is supervision. Supervising a building makes villagers drop off more resources than they are carrying. If a villager is carrying 10 resources, as we can see this villager is getting extra food, he will drop off 12 food instead. 20% extra. So you're creating extra food out of nowhere, making this whole thing last longer and increasing general income output. And the third thing you can do is to increase research and production speed inside the given buildings. Survival techniques takes 1 minute and 15 seconds, but we can make that 3 times as fast and make it last only 25 seconds when it is being supervised. This is a powerful mechanic and can be interrupted at any time, and then you'll have a percentual transition to how much time is still left on that research. For the purpose of explaining whether Imperial Official in the Dark Ages is worth it, I would like to take you into some maths. 5 villagers normally gather at a rate of 5 villagers, and an Imperial Official can boost drop-off by 20%. Therefore, it stands to reason that 5 villagers and 1 Imperial Official have the same food generation as 6 villagers. As 20% of these 5 constitutes a 6th villager for the Imperial Official. That means it's worth it to supervise a building from 5 villagers and above. With 5 villagers, there's no extra gain. With 6 villagers, we are gaining 20% of 1 villager extra income in comparison to what a 7th villager would be. So the official is now better than a single 7th villager. That makes the decision between 6 villagers and then a 7th, or 6 villagers and an IO, a simple decision. The Imperial Official boosts output, and he takes the same time to produce as a villager. So in terms of production time on your town center, the IO is now the superior choice when I am fully focused on food. But there's a few extra conditions to consider as well. we are going to pay a debt of 100 food for the imperial official. First of all, we need to have the 100 food in order to be able to make that decision. Secondly, we need to be able to earn that 100 food back on time for our next investment into food, not to be delayed to a point that we don't want it to be delayed too. So what else costs food? Scouts, horsemen, spears, archers, villagers, other imperial officials, and feudal age upgrade. So if we go for a Dark Ages imperial official, it's going to delay our feudal timing. Many factions age up somewhere between the 2 minutes and 20 seconds to 3 minutes. And we can see that AI just reached feudal age at 5 minutes. That means they started it either at 2 minutes or at 2:30 or 3 minutes and then power built it with more than one villager. And this is a normal timing for people to reach feudal, 5 minutes. So our own feudal is going to be delayed. So let's talk about what feudal we can get. Barbican of the Sun, which is a glorified watchtower, an outpost, a defensive thing. An Imperial Academy that I won't go too deep into, but it's useless. Generating extra gold is useless because tax collection is the weakest of the Imperial officials' 3 unique capabilities. There's always more taxes in your economy and production buildings than you can possibly collect over the course of a game. And as your sprawling base expands in size and location coverage, it takes longer and longer for the official to take gold and bring it back to the town center. So we've got one entirely useless landmark and one good defensive landmark that can protect an area and drops off in importance and relevance as the game goes on. It's good between the 5 to 10 minute mark, and after that it becomes less and less of a concern and deterrent. Barbican will be our standard age up landmark, but how fast do we need it? We could need it early for defense, but if we don't, then its speed didn't matter. The next thing is, when we reach feudal, what can we get out of feudal? Archery range, stables, blacksmith, marketplace, second town center, and stone walls. That's what we can get out of feudal. So if we are immediately making one of these after we reach feudal, we can say it's relevant to delay imperial official, to not make a Dark Age official, and to first get to feudal and then use it. But now the question is, when does the imperial official pay back his loan of 100 food? When are you actually ahead if you go for an imperial official compared to if you don't? And if you do go for a Dark Age official, should it be at the 0 minute mark, the 0 second, 0 minute mark, the start of a game? Should it be your second unit, third or fourth? For this, I have done some maths. Okay, let's explain how we can generate extra food from the imperial official. He can supervise a mill, but he can't supervise a town center. And in the Dark Ages, generally civilizations, and the Chinese are no different, do not gather with more than 5 villagers on a resource. If we go for early lumber, except for when it's on a water map, we typically have somewhere between 1 to 4 villagers on wood. And on gold, we typically have 0 to 4 villagers on gold. French faction is different, sometimes have 4 or 5 or 6, but that is in anticipation of gold spending in feudal age. Stone likewise, 4 villagers usually the most, and rather at the end of reaching feudal rather than at the beginning of it. And can that 100 food really be spent when you've got so many villagers on wood? Do you even have 100 food left in your town center? So typically the only reason for you to want to make an early imperial official for the purpose of gaining a better economy in the course of a game, somewhere in the first 10 minutes of a game, you require a mill. And the mill costs 50 wood. How much wood do you have at the start of a game? You can make a mill, a mining camp, and a lumber camp, and you're out. Or you can delay the mining camp and then go for a house, so you can go over 10 population. But once you've got these expenditures, you're gonna need to have extra wood in order to make anything else at all. So in order to make the mill, in order to validate the imperial official, we need a mill. And because of that, we need a lumber camp. Many feudal tech timings do not use a lumber camp. They go mill, house, and mining camp. Or you can go lumber camp, house, and mining camp, and don't mill, and just gather the sheep under your town center. So if you want to use the Imperial Official, the mill is required, therefore the lumber camp is required. And therefore you don't have wood for a mining camp. But the tax generation aspect of the Imperial Official can give us some advantages here. It is possible to get enough gold to age up without even going for a mining camp, simply by using the taxes. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how much villagers drop off in terms of resources. Generally, villagers generate about 40 resources per minute. 40 food, 40 gold, 40 stone, 40 wood. It's an average and it's influenced by many things. For example, distance from mill to the berries. This is going to hurt your output. And if a sheep is here, it doesn't generate as much food from villagers as when a sheep is here, under the town center, nigh invisible. This sheep has 0 travel time for villagers that are standing directly next to it, but has more travel time for villagers that are standing on the outside of it. That's why we're working in averages here. It's not important for it to be 100% perfect. Just accept the figure that it's 40 resources per minute, roughly. That means that 5 villagers, or 6 villagers, and 5 villagers and an IO, as we said before, is even. And that means that 6 villagers plus an IO generates more than 7 villagers. And we've explained this before, because 6 times 1.2 is 7.2, and 7 is 7. So 6 villagers and an IO have 20% more resource generation. And since a villager generates 40 resources per minute, 0.2 times 40 is 8 resources. So the IO has 8 food advantage. So if we're talking about 7 villagers, we are now generating at 8.4 villagers worth, which is an extra 0.4, which is 16 resources. So let's say that we either want 8 villagers on food, or we want 7 and an Imperial Official. 7 and an Imperial Official has the depth of 100 food, but you're generating 16 extra food per minute compared to 8 villagers. So how long does it take to earn back the 100 food? Well, that's 100 divided by 16. And that's 6.25, or 6 minutes and 15 seconds. So the 100 food is earned back over 6 minutes and 15 seconds. That means if Imperial Official is your first training, you will earn it back at 6 minutes 35. However, you only start with 6 villagers, not 7. So for the purpose of simplicity, let's say that your first production is a villager, and then you make the Imperial Official. Then you'll always truly be gathering with 7 villagers. And that means when your official finishes at the 40-second mark of the game time, you will earn it back by 6 minutes and 55 seconds. That's when you are better off or equal, and then start getting better off, as to if you would have never made the Imperial Official at all in the Dark Ages. 6 minutes 55. However, all of your villagers will bring back their first portion of sheep food that the moment that your Imperial Official could have finished producing. They're bringing it back 2 seconds after the IO reaches your mill at the berries, where the sheep also will be brought to. Therefore, we will just start with the Imperial Official, then we'll make the extra villager to have 7 on food, and then we'll remember that around the 7-minute mark, we will be better off. So that is the maths on the IO when we always have 6 or more or 7 villagers on food. By the 7-minute mark, we'll be better off. So now let's talk about why we may not want an Imperial Official. The time between the earliest feudal timing and the 7-minute mark is where we would need to gain an advantage on the map. If we are able to, between the 5 to the 7-minute mark, or let's say 5 to 6:30, That's a 1.5 minute window. If in that window we are able to achieve some real progress on the map with horseman pressure, 1, 2, or 3 horsemen, or maybe 5 scouts, or maybe we want to have 5 archers very early. If we are doing any of those and we're killing enemy scouts, enemy villagers, we're denying him access to scouting, we are controlling a deer camp, anything like this with the known strategies we have at this time, including any strategies that may come up in the future, if we are able to use the 5 to 6:30 game time, then I will say IO is probably best skipped. But if we are not doing any of those, and we are not making ourselves extra safe right now with that 100 bonus food that we now didn't spend on the IO, because we need to rapidly adapt to a Dark Age rush from the Mongols, and we need some spears, and the IO has hogged up valuable resources that we really needed now, but we can't, and he hasn't earned it back yet because we're only at the 4-minute mark. Well, then I will say we don't want the Imperial Official yet. But for the purpose of most of my build orders, I will be using an Imperial Official, as I think it is better mathematically. And I would only drop him if I analyze in the future that there's going to be situations where I need to be active at the 5 to 6 minute mark. Hope that's clear. It needed a lot of explanation, and we'll be going to the build orders next. But I think it's important because the IO is fairly complex. Keep in mind that this mostly focused on food economy. There are other things to consider, but like I said, on water start, you'll be having 2 on food, you'll be having 4 on wood generally, and we'll cover the water start build order later. There's no way that 2 villagers on food can pay a 100 food loan. Even if you want to boost lumber income, that 100 food loan cannot be paid back, cannot be spent, cannot be afforded. You have a cut in villager production and it sucks. And keep in mind that in between food drop-offs, you can quickly collect gold. You can go bring it back and re-supervise before your villagers are dropping off for the second time. So you are able to do even more with an Imperial Official early. Even when you're using it just for food, you're still also getting gold from it, without any food loss at all if you do it right. And I'll show you that in the build order. Okay guys, you've made it to the first part of the build order. Later on, I'll be explaining the second, third and fourth build orders, which are going to be defensive, aggressive and water. First, we're going to be starting with an easy AI opponent, where I can show you how a game looks like when there's minimal interaction with your opponent. Holy Roman Empire, Holy Roman Empire, Delhi and Abbasid are more likely to leave you in peace, as well as enemy Chinese players. I've noticed that in many Chinese mirror games, both have a kind of hidden contract to be defensive and to not be attacked, and to just boom in economy, going for a second town center and so on and so forth. And I've actually used that to enact my aggressive build order sometimes, which is the third one in this video, to surprise a fellow Chinese player with some early archers and ram rush. Keep in mind the following though: the patch from the end of November 2021 has allowed main town centers to retarget their fire onto things that are not the first thing that came in range. So while before you were able to use a ram to draw all main town center fire, and that would allow you to move into the enemy base with impunity, with archers and horsemen and spears and so on, that is no longer possible. Whether this was an intended change or a side effect of the ungarrison change that they made in the patch, you can ask me about that on my Twitch stream, what that is not sure yet. What is sure though is that it happened. That means that the Barbican of the Sun and the main town center are now able to retarget. Your second town center is not able to retarget by right-clicking an enemy unit. And what that means is that when we're choosing our second town center location, rather than choosing a choice piece of land, a beautiful forest cabin where we've got deer and wood and gold nearby, we're rather making the second town center inside our base, next to the main town center, next to the Barbican of the Sun, in order to have the maximum potential defense into ram pushes. Holy Roman can do a mean ram push, and we'll try to be ready for that, but for the purpose of this build, it's almost like we're playing this in a microcosm of passivity. The first 6 to 7 minutes, we're not expecting a lot of player interaction. And I'm going to try to show you here how you can have a very smooth, economic, greedy game with optimal resource distribution with your villagers and so on and so forth. Where we're going into a second town center, then into Song Dynasty, and then into making units to try to defend against a potential attack with rams or otherwise. Having said that, let's jump into the game. One more thing before we start the game. One more thing before we start the game. In the recent meta of December 2021 and the end of November, it has been uptrending to get the professional scouts upgrade and to bring back deer to the core of your base. This allows you to be safer, as you do not need to spread yourself out across the map, finding deer, putting a mill there, and having to defend a much larger border than simply the core of your own base. Not being forced to rely on sheep or just berries or making early farms for food can be a really big advantage. Furthermore, any scouts that you make are able to be part of a future scouting plan, or maybe your scouts can fight their scouts, and maybe your professional scouts deer carcass courier service can deny your opponent who has the exact same plan to courier the deer back to their town. Anything that you get is something that they're not getting, so it's worth twice as much. Therefore, there's been a lot of professional scouting, and we'll try to incorporate that into our build as well. So without further ado, let's begin. First thing we're gonna do is build a mill on the berries. First unit we're gonna make is an Imperial Officer. We're gonna bring back at least 1 sheep, preferably more. And we'll take the villagers, and we're gonna put the sheep right here so that 6 villagers can surround it. We're now going to look for as many sheep as possible. We can see only 5 can surround it. The other one went for another sheep. Ideally, you make the sheep spaced just far enough from the mill so that all 6 can attack the same sheep, all 6 can gather from the same sheep, which means that their drop-off timing is synchronized. Now, while we play on the map hill and dale here, we can actually say that opening with deer would have been even faster. They have a greater gathering rate than sheep. But not every map has deer this close to the base. As such, I will not be making use of them, as that would give an unfair advantage and would ruin the benchmark of this video. We will look for the moment where all of them bring back their food at the same time. Gonna make a house now, and then it's gonna go to wood. All of them just brought back their food. That's when we're gonna collect tax, bring it back, and then Shift E back onto the mill. We can see that we only missed 1 window from that one guy that was killing the second sheep. And now they finished the first sheep, so now they're all gathering around the second sheep. And had the second sheep been 100% adjacent to the mill, they would not have been able to all surround it. But I've now brought back additional sheep. And we can see that they've just done all of their return again. So I'm going to take 1 more and just bring back. Now we have 20 gold. Going to pick it up, bring it back, shift-click, resupervise. And that is how we will get 100 gold. And we can see he gets back just in time for the next drop-off. This takes a bit of practice, but it's the way to get 100 gold to get to feudal without being forced to make any mining camp on gold. And then everything else can go to wood. I'm now gonna make a scout. Then I'm gonna make 1 more villager. I wait for the big drop-off again. And if you are missing the big drop-off point of your villagers, you can always do a force return command yourself and then shift click back to food, which gives you the window to pick up the 20 gold and resupervise in time. You'll be looking for more sheep on the map. If you're against Roos, you would be killing deer that you find to deny them their gold bounty bonus. We also are going to go for a second scout. Not all of my builds that I've shown on YouTube so far make use of a second scout, nor is this the perfect window that I've settled on for another scout. I think there's many potential timings that you could go for. But I think we're going to see more and more double scout play coming from various factions, as it gives you more information and it gives you more future deer control. After we had 5 villagers on wood, we made a second imperial official to supervise wood. As you remember the maths, it is worth it to get another official as soon as you've saturated a resource node with 5 or more villagers. And while that does slow down potentially my feudal, it gives me more resources to work with in the future. We've just reached enough resources for feudal, so we're going to make a Barbican of the Sun to protect another gold and to protect a stone. We're also going to make another house. The scouts keep going around to find more sheep and to also get information from him. And we can keep doing the same thing to get bonus gold. But now that we have a bit of enough food, we're going to start getting gold, as we'll require gold for professional scouts upgrade. We can also do a forced return of our wood if we want, but it is usually not good to do a forced return of wood to optimize wood income. It's better to wait for the majority to bring it back, as force commands increase walking time, and that can be a bad thing. We're not making another imperial official, both because we do not have the 100 food loan to afford his cost, nor do we have another resource node, and he should not be here, by the way. There's no point to supervise this with so few villagers on it. We don't have enough to supervise yet. You want to have 5 minimum. Okay, we're gonna bring back these sheep. This one is scouting. He's gonna bring back his sheep as well. Okay, we now have enough on for wood. We're gonna get stone and we're gonna supervise that too with this official. He's gonna supervise it before it's finished. You can supervise it already. All the villagers go on stone. We're trying to get enough gold in order to afford this professional scouts, and we're gonna make a stables to make additional scouts. All new villagers now will go to wood to get the 400 that's required to afford a second town center. So we're doing several different things at once. They're gonna bring back their gold. That's enough for now. He's gonna bring back the taxes, and that's gonna give us enough for the professional scouts upgrade. So we start that upgrade, and then when we have the food, we're gonna start extra scouts. When we have enough stone, we need 300 stone. Now we're gonna send 5 on gold. We're gonna send the rest to wood. And the officer is gonna collect a bit of gold here, bring that back to the town center. We're gonna keep making scouts. And make another house. He will bring the gold back, supervise the wood, and our scouts are going to start bringing back deer. Once we have the 400 wood, we can make a second town center. So in order to bring back the deer, you can just right-click them, shift-click them one by one, and then you can bring them back in that way. They will do it themselves, pick up the corpse, you can shift-click them back to the mill. We want a total of 6 scouts. And you can just shift-click them back to the mill repeatedly. Okay, we have enough wood. Let's make the second town center. He's gonna return gold. They're gonna bring back all the deer. We're gonna get the hunting techniques when we've got the wood for it. And this is very micro-intensive. Hunting techniques. This is all very micro-intensive, as we need more on food again, since we've made as many scouts as we require. Second town center is done. Gonna balance out our economy as much as we can. We're now making 2 town centers at a time. Now everything goes on we're gonna get wheelbarrow upgrade. Everything goes on the deer. All the villages here. We're supervising the 2 buildings that have the biggest representation. Gonna bring all the deer back. Shift E, Shift E, Shift E, and then out. You want to do multiple commands, as it can take a while to for them to drop off. And if they clump up each other, sometimes they don't drop off. That's why you want to do several Shift E commands. Just keep kind of balancing out your economy. You can also build a new lumber camp, supervise that, have all of them power built it, and then they do a supervised drop off. Plus 69, nice. Okay, now that we've reached enough resources, we can go for Song Dynasty. I don't really care where to make it. That's gonna give us bonus villager production, and we also need to worry about defense. So we're gonna make 2 archery ranges to be able to be prepared to make Chugunu. Early scouts and units can kind of be dealt with our scouts. We've done a very greedy economic opener. We're gonna have a lot of villager production. We're gonna prepare houses. The moment that our Song Dynasty finishes, we're gonna make villagers. Bring back as many deer as you can on the map. And of course, if you're doing really good, you will check, hey, is my opponent ram all-inning me? Maybe we should send 1 scout to the enemy base to see if it's gonna be a ram all-in. If it is, I may in fact play this game differently. Ram all-ins are pretty hard to hold for Chinese. We would be doing more walls to buy time. We would be skipping Song Dynasty and maybe get... maybe we'd skip Song Dynasty, or we would like gather resources differently. We'd probably skip hunting techniques and wheelbarrow, get Song Dynasty faster. Because I think Chugunu are the best counter in general that we can make to a ram all-in. As although they do get blocked by armor, they still have 3 shots. And then the next thing you want to do is just to get a lot of gold, get a lot of food. We are getting a lot of food. You want to get a lot of gold in order to go to the 3rd age. And depending on how many units you make, you should be able to go to the 3rd age at something like the 11-minute mark or close to it. Maybe not quite the 11-minute mark, but it really depends on how many Chugunu you made. So we'll bring back some gold. Got villagers making houses and stuff. You're gonna make walls. Now, I ain't saying that this was a perfect opener. Some people can have 2nd TC and Song Dynasty much quicker, but they wouldn't be doing professional scout upgrade. There are quicker timings for that, but I'm kind of doing many different things at the same time. I'm securing a massive food income for the future. I'm securing a very healthy economy, a lot of scout presence. I have the ability to go horseman if someone is being aggressive with archers earlier. And when that happens, I would be supervising the stable to make it count for 3. So there are definitely variations possible. I'm not looking to do anything the fastest. I'm looking to have a really good economy, a monster economy behind a very economic opening. And the ability to switch into defense if required without having too many sacrifices. I think this is a strong opening. I really like it. It hasn't really led me astray yet, and I entered top 200 with it. Though I will say, I don't always go for this opening. I try to scout. Perfectly laid out plans never happen quite as you expect them. I will go back into stone at some point. Maybe I'll get my 3rd and 4th officer. Though you should try to get all your officers before Song Dynasty, as it is less effective during it. Now we're gonna make Clock Tower. We're gonna be supervising the Clock Tower. We're gonna be supervising everything. You want to have 1 on Clock Tower, 1 on gold, 1 on mill, and 1 on lumber camp. That's how you want to use your imperial officers. So a really fun opening overall. A lot of potential. We're gonna be able to mix crossbows with Chugunu, which is a great combination. Chugunu deal with light armor, crossbow deal with heavy armor. Gonna get armor upgrades. Maybe we sell some food. We're gonna get some melee armor. Maybe we're gonna get some stone walls. There's lots of possibilities. Scout and react is always true, and the best build orders start to become less and less reliable as you interact with your opponent. But that's why we scout and react. And then your ideal army composition could be Springles, Chugunu, and crossbowmen. And that is a strong defensive army comp where everything is ranged, works particularly well over stone and wooden walls. Or you could say, hey, if it was not required to be done so, you could go for 3 barracks. You could go 3 barracks and go palace guards with springles, also possible. Of course, this is a game of counters, so you would be always trying to counter your opponent. Hope you enjoyed this build order and learned some useful concepts for it. This was economy opening. Gonna go men at arms now as well. Why not everything, right? And usually the way that Chinese wants to play is in fact with the stone wall everywhere, which buys you a lot of time. Right? They build really fast as well, so it's really nice. Oh, anyway, I don't have enough stone. There we go, there we go. And you want to do that a lot quicker. I'm not saying build it now, right? Like, you want to build stone walls, especially on a map like this. And then usually the way that China would move out onto the map would be with 800 stone. And then you would like, as follows. You would take this, you'll build a keep. It builds super fast. You take all your army, you take your villagers, you build the keep, and then you build a mill, stone camp, whatever you want. And that is the way of Chinese aggression after booming, by using a fast built keep. And you can, hell, you can build that keep right in front of their base. It really depends on the situation. Really fun build, very effective. And suitable when you notice your opponent is gathering stone, aka they're trying to be economical themselves. Or when you see that they're doing a lot of scouts, you know, hey, they're going 1 base fast castle. Then you go 2.5 base, no, 3 base. This is 3 base fast castle. In fact, a villager is 13 seconds with Song Dynasty, which is 54% faster villager production. Not even just 50%. They say it's a 35% reduction in villager production time, but because it's rounded down 13 seconds instead of 13.3 repeating, of course, it's 54% faster villager production, and that makes your 2TC count as 3.08 town centers instead of 3 town centers. So it's very good economy. We're combining that with the scouts. We're bringing back the deer. It's a strong opener. No one can compete with Chinese economy when left alone. And then you've got the springles with the bonus health. You're going to get your bombards eventually. GG. Hope you enjoyed. That was economy opening. Next is defensive. Hey guys, and welcome to the next part of my build order video. In this video, I'm going to be showing you my best build order against early aggression. My good friend Shou was able to play some custom games with me, where he was Mongols and I was Chinese. Mongols right now, as of early December 2021, is the primary aggressive faction. And I would like to start this part of the video by explaining why they're aggressive, how Chinese can stop it, or perhaps how we can't stop it. I'm going to be speeding this replay up and show you some of the mechanics of the Mongol in order to fully understand this part of the video, as I just pause it for a second. Mongol players tend to open up with an uvu, a unique economy and technology building that can be built over a stone outcropping. Uvus will allow you to have boosted military production. Instead of having any villagers on top of the uvu gathering stone, you will gain a trickle of gold every second, and that's going to allow you to mass produce units. Let's have Shou finish this barracks, and then we can see how that works. The barracks finishes, and we can see that he has the option to make a standard spearman at a standard price during for a standard duration, or he can just spend the exact same wood and food and then have that be increased to 2 spearmen, everything the same, but he's just drawing from an extra resource of stone. This is how the Mongols work. So using 80 stone allows him to make 2 spearmen at a time. And now, after the first set of spearmen, he can make another set of spearmen, and he does so gratefully. That means that he's going to be having, as soon as he's got the food for it, 4 spears for the price of 2. While we should be counting the stone cost as well, the stone comes in at no villager expenditure. It's a one-time upfront cost of the uvu, and after that, it's going to be continually used. we can see that there's not enough stone to do this a third time immediately. So he can either make a fifth spearman or wait until he's got enough stone again to make a fifth and a sixth together. Now I would like to talk about cost efficiency. If one player is able to make spearmen 2 at a time for the price of 1, in this case the Mongols, and the other player would have to pay the full pound for spears, it stands to reason that eventually the other player would be overwhelmed by the spearman, not being able to match that kind of production efficiency. Even if I use the Imperial official to boost the speed of me pumping out spearmen, I wouldn't be able to have the resources to have as many as he has at the same token. Therefore, I must conclude that they can have more spearmen than me, and it is not sensible for me to combat his push with spearmen. We actually had a ladder game where Sho beat me handily with his spearman aggression, and I decided to try and stop it with my own spears. And that was my conclusion. He would use his spears to beat mine, having more of them, and he then used it to stake out a claim, building outposts around crucial resources, denying me the access to things like food, gold, stone, or even wood. The result of this game that I'm going to be showing you guys now is my solution to early aggression from, for example, a Mongol player. And they are the prime suspect when dealing with this kind of play. I'll be taking you from the start of this replay till the middle of it to show you what kind of build you should be doing when you're being pressured like this. I would like to finish this early prelude by saying that all I can make in Dark and Feudal are spears, archers, and horsemen. The same thing that the Mongol can make. But the Mongol can also make horsemen in Dark Ages. It's something to keep in mind. And all of those units that he makes, he can use stone to double their output, and I can't. Therefore, it is not sensible for the Chinese player to use spears, archers, and horsemen in equal amounts to what they're making, as they will always have you beat in terms of numbers. As a result, we have to play the early game defensively. But both of us start with 6 villagers, and both of us will make 1 villager every 20 seconds. As a result, I will not be economically ahead of the Mongol, and we've also decided that I'm forced, and I'll explain more about this soon, forced to make several outposts in defense to stop an angled attack from this side, and then from this side, and then onto my gold. So I need outposts in many places. These are expenditures that the Mongol player does not have to make because he didn't lose map control, unlike me. So my unit inefficient production and my being forced to make outposts leads to the following conclusion. If all things like these are unequal, I will be behind. Already, I won't have map control and I'll be forced to make expenditures that do not help me to push out onto the map and attack. As a result, it is not sustainable for me to play only that way. Therefore, I need to make use of unique Chinese civilization bonuses. This could be like going Song Dynasty to make Truganu in order to have a unit that he has no access to. If that unit by itself would be strong enough not just to defend, and if it came out early enough, I would be able to use the Truganu to first defend and then be aggressive. Or I could try to go to Fast Castle, where I say, yes, I'm forced to make all kinds of outpost defenses, but I'm actually going to be okay with that because I'm going Fast Castle, and then I will gain access to units or tech that the Mongol, who tries to be early aggressive with spears, cannot compete with. And this is a possibility. But I would like to present you with a paradox, after explaining one final point. The spears that the Mongol player has, as Sho demonstrated in some of the previous games that I practiced with him, when he has 8 spears and when he's threatening outpost production, he can use the Khan signal arrow, a fire signal arrow that increases the movement speed of all nearby units for 5 seconds. He used this effectively to kill some of my villagers, despite me trying to scramble to get into the outpost. Anytime he gets a singular villager, he increases the advantage that he has in the game. By having 1 extra villager at the 6-minute mark or the 4-minute mark, he has a lifelong economic advantage. And every time he does that and we lose a villager here and there, we fall further and further behind. Now not only useless investment in outposts, but also fewer units on the map and loss of villagers. Because of this, it is important to up-value the value of our turtle and our defensive position. We don't have special units, we have no particularly amazing economic advantages, and we have no information about what he's doing. Information being very important in a strategy game. As such, we will up-value our situation by having access to bonus villager production. We will go in true Chinese fashion, where we will have the numbers advantage. We will try to say, okay, my archers, my spears, whatever, I can't have as many as you do on the same cost. Let's make sure that we've got a bigger income. And therefore, I will be showing you this 2 town center opener. And that is the paradox. Even though we face heavy aggression, we will endeavor to expand our economy within the turtle that we have. We'll try to bunker up against aggression, refrain from using cost inefficient units to combat him in mass spears, and we'll get a second town center. So on that note, let's begin the build. 6 villagers on mill, and then immediately start gathering from sheep that the scout brings. The first unit we make is an Imperial officer. He immediately goes to the mill. And I've already explained why I think this is a good opener in general. Start supervision. The villagers will bring back food roughly at the same time as they started gathering roughly at the same time. After they've make note of when all the villagers bring back their food. The first trip deposits 6 gold in the mill, and when they all do it again, there's 12. When they all do it again, there's almost 20. We're going to be building a house now with the first new villager, and then we're going to send more villagers on food. Meanwhile, our scout looks for sheep and tries to bring it back. One thing high on the priorities against Mongols is to go check out what they're doing at various points. Keep in mind that that mill that we made, as explained before, reduces our available lumber, and therefore we cannot go for a mining camp on gold, but we're going to use the tax officer to pick up gold. Note how I made all 5 villagers bring back their food that they had at the time into the mill to make sure that I made use of the 20% drop-off bonus. Only then did I take my officer to pick up 20 gold from the mill, bring it back, giving me 120 in the Imperial coffers. Then back to supervision before your villagers drop off their next drop-off of food. After 7 on food, as you can see, everything else has gone to wood. Normally, that's all fine and well. But against Mongols, we keep in mind the little footnote that if they are aggressive, and we're going to scout them now that we've brought back enough sheep, we will siphon off more villagers into wood so that we can make defensive outposts, so that we're not forced to make cost-inefficient villager production. Every time the villagers bring back their food together, that is a window for me to take taxes. If I don't see the window, because I didn't pay attention, or because they bring back their food in fragmented timings, I could choose to do a force return command myself and then shift-click them back onto food, to give that clear window for the officer to bring back the 20 gold to the town center. As I just did, we now have 140. The scout checks and sees, hey, spears are coming. This moment, 238, is when we see the barracks and the spears. So I already start siphoning off villagers away from food to wood. The best plans fail. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. Nelson Mandela. An Imperial officer starts to go back to the mill. Keep in mind that everything from this point onwards becomes a dirty build order, essentially. None of this is going to be pure anymore because it is heavily contingent upon what my opponent is doing. Therefore, things may not be perfect, but things never are in war games. We're going to make an outpost here to defend our food. And then we saw the aggression from the right side. We're going to make another outpost here. He brought 1 villager, but we've got the power of bonus Chinese speed production, in addition to being able to pull multiple villagers. I think I overdid it a bit here. As you can see, this outpost is 60% done. I could have power built it with 4 and I would still be fine. There is a diminishing return to extra villagers building the same thing, and I overdid it here, but I was afraid. 5 on food, 11 on wood. I also missed a few gold return points for the tax collector, and I sent it past the town center rather than on top right now. But still, I'm trying to get pockets of 20 gold back. The lumber camp has now generated enough gold to also bring back 20. And with the 15-second cooldown and the available gold on the mill, I'm actually getting enough gold really soon in order to pick it up. And I have enough now, as soon as I have the wits to notice it, to take the final 20 gold, bring it back for 5 clean 20 gold trips to basically be able to sponsor a feudal tech timing 100% based off of tax gold. Despite, and I forgot to bring back the gold here, you see. Now we can make the Barbican. And that could have been cleaner, but like I said, things are really messy. Now I'm making a mining camp on stone. This is the first executive decision that I made that seems like a paradox. It seems weird. While you're being attacked, that's when you're going for stone to prepare for a second town center. But like I said, I reasoned out the paradox that it is better to invest in the future of economy on my turtle rather than trying to compete with the Mongol in what they do best. Mass early unit production for a cheap price. So we're starting to gather stone. We make the Barbican, and I gotta say the range of this watchtower is until roughly here. So the Barbican here would have been much safer and cost efficient. Now he could try to use Signal Arrow to pressure my villagers and kill any. And if we see, I didn't lose any villagers yet. Show said he had a bit of a harder game this time. He beat me handily twice before this, but I wanted to show you the results of my experiments. You can see how easy it could be if you don't react fast, where you could lose some villagers. And again, the attack range is here. If I built the Barbican here, that would be totally fine. Don't be too greedy with your position like I was. I'm now supervising Lumber Camp. Imperial officials should always supervise the building that has the most villagers allocated towards it. Unless. It's always like that. If you want to supervise food, that should be the dominant resource gathering. Otherwise, it's better to just take one villager from wood and put it on food. If you decide you don't want to boost this many villagers on wood, always supervise the majority resource. Looks like I lost a villager now, and that's how you can start to see, hey, I'm 23 villagers, he's at 23. Eventually that's going to change, right? It's going to be in my disadvantage if I keep losing some. That's why I want that early stone gathering. And I think the Barbican here would have been better, right? For the reasons mentioned. My stone would be safe. So back on stone, trying to defend against this outpost and realize, like, okay, yeah, it's good to have an outpost here for vision and defense, but it's actually really hard to kill an enemy outpost with your own. The ranged armor and the damage just means that that's never gonna fly. I could make hand cannon slits though. Hand cannon slits, I am actually making it. It's gonna allow this tower to shoot by itself. But it's like 8 damage or something into too much ranged armor. So yeah, I make the slits, but it's not really crucial. Mass gathering stone and a new Imperial officer, second one, in order to supervise this building. That should have been the key. As you see this build, this game kind of developing, let's talk a little bit about automatic tax collection. If automatic tax collection is on, the Imperial officer will go around by themselves collecting gold in maximums of 20, within cooldowns of 15 per resource building and production building. They also have. But if you turn it off, this is actually important for me, generally, to turn off automatic tax collection. The best thing an officer can do is to boost production. 3 times as fast production means that this range is worth 3 ranges. The second best thing they can do is to boost resource drop-offs 20% more, making the resources that you have actually count for more, in addition to the bonus generation. And the third best thing you can do is tax collection. So you don't want to make 4 officers just to let them go around on automatic tax collection in general. That's the thing you do if you've got nothing else to do with officers. In between. And if you have good APM and multitask, you can manually collect taxes and then go back to supervision. Having said that, there's one important thing I need to explain to you about automatic tax collection. If an officer collects tax from a building and autocast is on, and he's on a return trip to the town center to drop it off, he will ignore all commands of supervision. So if you've got a returning officer going back to your town center and you say E, supervise, left click lumber mill, you'll hear the sound. He will look at it 1 second, then he'll go back to the town center to start collecting. This overriding makes sense from a game AI perspective, where he's like, I'm autocast collecting, I need to bring back this gold. But as a player, it's annoying. As such, turning this off removes all that grief, stops all that noise, and allows me to make my own mistakes rather than having the game make mistakes to override my good moves. While that it is potentially tedious, there is a logic to it. You can see I'm doing a personal tax collection myself here. I right click it on my town center. I then shift E it back on a resource building if I want to. Or in this case, looks like, where am I going with this one? I have no idea, guys. I don't know where he's going. Oh yeah, I'm gonna supervise the gold. I chose to go for a different gold. And it is worth it because I've got more than 5 villagers on the gold. See? Keep in mind you can supervise a building before it finishes. So you don't need to wait till it finishes, which is really neat. You do a long distance mining camp location production, you supervise it, and then boom. Okay, now that we have our second town center, let's explain a little bit about why second town center, then Song Dynasty, is better than Song Dynasty into town center. Song Dynasty allows you to produce villagers 50% faster. A second town center allows you to produce villagers 100% faster. And going Song Dynasty, when you're on 2 town centers, allows you to build 50% faster from 2. AKA, Song Dynasty is worth a 3rd town center when you've got 2. But it's worth half a town center when you've got 1. And a second town center is worth 1 town center when you've got 1. As such, the biggest economic advantage is gained from a second town center, and after that, Song has the same value as a 3rd town center when it comes to villager production and therefore your income scaling. And Song only, with no second town center, is worth only half a town center. Song costs 600 resources and a town center costs 700. A negligible difference. Furthermore, the Imperial Economy is virtually useless. Nearby buildings generate extra tax gold. Let's see how much at this very reasonable 11-minute mark buildings have. 8 gold inside the archery range, 160 in the mill, 6 in this lumber camp, 10 in this lumber camp, and 49 in this. Even if my 2-3 officials were non-stop gathering, they would never be able to empty this mill. And while this mill has a 15-second cooldown and every other building has their own 15-second cooldown, that could mean that yes, this archery range would be procuring a greater storage of gold. This lumber camp, had it been in the range, which it's not, could have been procuring more gold. But it is almost impossible to collect that much gold, especially considering tax collection is the lowest of the 3 IO's capabilities. And this special upgrade to allow you to carry more gold per IO is also almost useless. It's not worth the money. You could potentially make use of it, but the extra resource investment of an Imperial official doesn't really earn itself back with that low trickle of gold. I would definitely consider making Imperial examinations later on. Now you can see that I have access to some archers and some Chuganu. This allows me to actually trade relatively even though I am very outnumbered. I killed 3, I lost 5. This is not a fantastic trade, but keep in mind that because I have second TC and Song Dynasty, I am producing villagers at 3 town centers rate. And while he did go for his own second town center, that means I am still outproducing him in villagers. Therefore my income scaling is 50% better than his. He's now going to Castle Age, and I myself cannot yet, but I'm upvaluing my economy. I'm also spending less on villages. That is unlocked via Song Dynasty, and I have the only unique unit that we have in Feudal Age through the Chuganu. And I'm now making a second archery range to make more of them while supervising both, which means I'm actually producing out of 6 archery ranges right now, Chuganu, and I can use those to defend. Here we have another battle, and if we look at the military, we can see I've lost 15 and he's lost 13. Almost an even trade. And now we've both lost 15. And now I'm winning the battle. And if I went for 1 TC Chuganu, I may not have enough resources to replenish my losses. But now we've driven him out, finally. We've driven out the rams and the archers with ourselves. And although the game still goes on, this is the breaking point where we've secured our defense. And we wouldn't have been able to do that from 1 town center. And that's the paradox of economic response into heavy aggression. From this point onwards, it's a case of making
it to castle age myself, or to attack with my own rams presently in order to deal economic damage to him. And as I speed up the replay and I've made these rams, we can start to try to deal damage to him. Keeping in mind, Chuganu do 3.5 times as much damage as archers into outposts, which actually means they do respectably into the outpost. We kill this Khan, we're killing some archers, we're target firing some of his gold villagers, and suddenly we have hurt him back as well. And from this point onwards, the game is winnable, where many other games before it wasn't. I've tied things together with some walls, which you always want to do into Mongols as soon as you can in order to stop run-bys. Another unique factional advantage that Mongols cannot do and most others can. I'm gonna try to get to Clock Tower. I do think I over-gathered wood, under-gathered some other resources, and I was too late on my castle age. But that's another case. This video was about defending early aggression, and I think I've shown the best way how, as far as I know. Hey guys, you've made it to the third build order part, ready to learn how to be a little or very aggressive with the Chinese civilization. This opener used to be, in my mind, a way to all in and defeat your opponent with a ram all in. But as I explained earlier in the video, people can now retarget away from rams with their main town center. As such, I don't think anyone in this game should be considering the ram to be a carte blanche, a free victory against their opponent when you have the numbers advantage, as their town center can retarget to your archers, spears or horsemen to attack them instead of the ram. As such, we are focused on doing serious or moderate damage in order to draw ahead without relying on bonus economy like Song Dynasty or second town center to draw ahead. We can still go for a second town center or Song Dynasty, but not without early aggression. There can be all kinds of reasons to go for early aggression, not the least of which is because it gives you information and it disrupts your opponent, making them make forced errors in addition to unforced errors. And this can be really valuable. It's also fun to be aggressive early. And while you make an early investment into units, you may nab a few villager kills, which gets you ahead in the long run. Or against someone that is being extremely greedily economically, you may be able to negate the economy advantage that they had while putting mental pressure on them, then you catching up with your own economy and eventually having a balanced 50% on par game. All right, I've done the premise. Now let's jump into build order number 3 for this monster guide, aggression. We're gonna be starting things off with all villagers on a mill. Imperial official, take the sheep on the scout. We're gonna drop the sheep off next to the mill for optimum location. All the villagers go on the sheep. That can be surrounded. Dumb villager got permablocked. Did you see that? And then we're going to supervise the mill. Now you may wonder, the Imperial official, I've done the maths earlier in the video. And like I said, if you're looking to achieve anything before the 7-minute mark, you may be inclined to believe that it is worth it to skip the official. But by my maths and by my reckoning, I don't think it's ever worth it. My intuition as well. While you can have more available resources before the 7-minute mark, those available resources would be expressed in a number between 1 to 99 food, more likely around the 50 food mark. Is 50 extra food worth it to not have the officer who can gain you additional free gold? I think not. As such, we open with the official, even though he may slow us down just a bit. Gonna bring back the gold and everything else on wood. The Imperial official can additionally be used to boost archery range output, which makes your single archery range worth 3 archery ranges. And as such, I believe, and we also don't intend to kill our opponent with this attack. We just intend to get economic advantage. So we want to have the officer. Wait till we have 20 gold. pick up the gold, go back, and go back. But we're not going to make a second Imperial official for this one. Not for this opening. Not like in the economy greedy opener. Just one. Once we've got 200 gold, we're going to age up, and we're going to have a heavy emphasis on lumber income. Actually, do I want the second Imperial official? I don't think so. I don't think I want the second official. I think we'll do it with just one. Because while the first official is earned back by the 7-minute mark, according to my reckoning, the next one, if I make it now, would be by the 9-minute mark. I think that's a little bit too late. Gonna bring back the sheep. Okay. We're gonna do a force return. Bring back the gold. Do we have enough in the lumber camp yet for another return from there? Not quite yet. Okay. Continue to scout around the map. Everything else on wood for now. I think I do want to get some gold as well. That's 20 gold. Bring that back, and then we go straight to the woods and do it again, and then we can age up. The Barbican is going to be next to the gold to protect it. We need lots of wood because we're going to mass produce archers. Keep in mind, we keep our official on the resource with the highest representation of villagers. If we're not happy with this representation, we would sooner shift these around. We also want to have minimum villager walking time, as walking time is gonna directly cause us to have less. Yo, thanks. It's directly gonna cause us to have fewer resource generation in total. These two, after finishing Barbican, are gonna go into gold. I'm gonna put one more. We want to have 5 on gold so we can get some cool upgrades. 5 on gold total, and that's it. Everything else to wood. I think now actually I'm able to get the official and have that be worth it. I didn't want to rush it. I don't think it's gonna hurt me to get it now, because I'm gonna get bonus wood production, and that's gonna give me options. Now, I may change my mind on this at some point, but it feels right to me. So we're getting to feudal. We're gonna make an archery range and a blacksmith instantly. That's how we make use of the timing. Gonna bring these sheep back. Official is finishing. Archery range is finishing. Bring this sheep back. Now we're gonna find out where our opponent is. You are allowed to scout earlier, by the way. Okay. Now we're gonna start making archers. We're gonna get attack upgrade. We're gonna supervise the archery range. Or alternatively, we could supervise the range and the wood, as wood is the most valuable resource now. And what we can also do is to supervise the blacksmith to boost upgrade. If we notice that our income production does not measure up to the rate of archers that we could produce, as is the case now, then we can make the upgrade go a little faster. And depending on the type of units that opponents get, we could shift our upgrade focus. Now back on the range, our goal is to get either 5 or 10 archers as quickly as possible. We now got 5 archers. We got 5 archers now. We're gonna make a 6th, and that's it. Back to supervise. So we're supervising gold, we're supervising wood. We're gonna take these archers. Keep in mind that 5 archers, 2 shots a villager. So this is the nature of our aggression. At this point, we send more to food again. At this point, you can go anywhere. This is basically the premise of my build. You can go siege engineering and keep boosting wood hard and go rams and make more archers. You can pull villagers away from gold and entirely go into food and wood. From this point, you can go anywhere. But the goal is to surprise someone with secret, surprising hidden archers. From here on, I could go one base Song Dynasty, I could go for a second town center, I could get the siege engineering upgrade, I can rush fast castle, I could even make a stable and now go into professional scouts. The point isn't so much what you do afterwards. It's saying, here's an option to get 5 archers across the map fast, 6 for good measure, or 10, right? As many as you like. You can make them 5 seconds each. Kill a bunch of villagers and then pull back, campaign well done. This build is simple as the others are complicated. Oh, he upgraded textiles. Well, nobody does that. Nobody actually does that. This one is as simple as the others are complicated. Hope you enjoy this little spin-off. GOHF soldiers. Next build is gonna be Chinese on water. Hey guys, I'll be sharing this game that I played on ladder against a French player called Chanay or Chanay. I'm not exactly sure. It's Chinese against French, and before the new patch, this would have been almost a default loss. The French much more powerful than Chinese on water. But since the Hawks got nerfed from 6 ranged armor to 2, arrow ships actually have a chance. And I was hard at work recently in the past days to develop a build order that can pump out enough junk ships, not my name, it's their actual name, in order to compete with the French Hawks from a defensive position, if not even an aggressive position. Here's the opener, and it's the same for many civilizations on water. 2 on food, 4 on wood. This gives you enough food to have non-stop villager production, while also giving you enough wood in order to build the fastest possible docks. The scout will try to find where deep sea fish are, deep water fish, the fastest source of food generation and pickup in the entire game, except maybe Holy Roman Empire. Inspired villagers getting shoreline fish, but that's another matter for another test. The scout has found deep sea water source. You can tell in the fog of war by the birds circling over it. So my villager is going to go there and build a dock. So rewind, it was 2 on food, 4 on wood, then I put another 1 on wood and then another 1 on food for a 3-5 split. All next villagers are going to wood now in order to get all the lumber required to build fishing boats whenever possible. Boats now cost 75 wood, and they are a great source of extra food. A lot of people wonder why docks at all should be good on a map like Boulder Bay, where you can also reach your opponent by land. But you will quickly fall behind in total income and the growth of your income if you do not make use of this extra source of income generation. Just like having access to a second town center gives you bonus villager production, which helps scale your economy to reach high economy rates much quicker, with the only downside being the potential risk that you expose yourself to by delaying army, docks likewise do the same thing. Water control is incredibly important on hybrid water maps, or even maps like Archipelago and Warring Islands that are 100% water maps, where the only way to get to your opponent is through warships, fishing boats, or transport ships. This is a hybrid map, Boulder Bay, one of the more hybridic maps compared to something like Ancient Spires or Mongolian Heights or Danube River, or however you pronounce that. So I'm going to be opening up with just 1 dock. There's 1, 2, or 3 dock openers. My goal is to get some extra food, but not to entirely pigeonhole myself into the water this early, especially since fishing boats are a little bit more expensive than they have been. I don't feel the need as much to rush out the extra boat. Make note of my economy so far. I still have 2 on food because I want to reach feudal in a decent time. But for the rest, the villagers that you see on food are actually fishing boats, and they bring back 40 food apiece, and you can see that their food generation is relatively fast, about 1 per second, compared to a villager on food having maybe 1 per 2 seconds or 1 per 1.5. I don't know exactly. At the 3-minute 18 mark, I've gone for a gold mining camp, while still having the most possible villagers on wood. I haven't made the forestry upgrade, as that's going to delay my feudal. And the goal for this build is to have 3 junk ships out by minute 6:30. That's the time where, in my experience, the French can have 2 hawks in my face. Or 1 with the second one coming soon. And 3 arrow ships can do good enough into that. If you make sure that your build order is as clean as the one I'm doing here, chances are that your 3 galleys, your 3 junks, will be up against 1 or 0 or at the most 2 hulks. And in most cases, I would say if your build is this clean, you'll be against 0 or 1 hulk at the level you're probably playing at. But even the worst possible scenario where they have 2 hulks, it takes only 29 seconds for you to have 6 junks out. So if you can buy just a bit of time, you're guaranteed to win the water battle on your own side of the map, which is really incredible to consider, considering that French used to be completely unbeatable in free loss on water. Right now, the amount of villagers we have on food is 0. We have taken all of them off and we are relying entirely on fishing boats. Besides, of course, the villager that's still doing shore fishing here. We keep this villager here so that he can make a dock in the future. We've gone for a barbecue of the sun by the 4 minutes 40 mark. We have enough gold and food for it, while banking up considerable amounts of wood. We're going to be making the barbecue with 2 to 3 villagers. I'm not exactly sure which one is right yet, and it's kind of going to get messed up because of his scout harass. I'll sometimes take my villagers to attack his scout and then go back to gathering, but for the most part, you can see now 0 villagers. For the most part, it's going to be an average of 2 to 3 villagers. We go for a total amount of 7 fishing boats. I'm not sure if I still make another one or if I stop at 7. I've experimented with 7, 6 and 8, and that number is roughly correct or so. You can see I'm at 7. I'm actually going to go for a 9th and for an 8th and a 9th. And I think I stopped right there at 9 boats. We're now making the barbecue with 4 villagers. We've built up enough lumber here We've built up enough lumber in order to be able to make ships upon reaching feudal, and there we go. Now, I will say that I had the villager capacity and I had the wood capacity to have finished the 3rd dock earlier. A dock only takes 30 seconds to build. So while mine is going to be finished at 6:15, do a little bit of forgiving, 6:08, do a little bit of forgiving mental gymnastics and consider that I had built it at the right time. I also have a perfect rendition against AI, but in that game, I don't have a real human opponent. And I decided to show this one, as in this game, I actually have a human opponent. You can have 3 galleys out by the 6:30 mark, 3 junks. You can see that I have 2 junks out, but I have another in production. It shows that I could have had 3 right now. Generally, you're going to use those for defense. But because I haven't seen a Hulk here yet, and I now know that by 6:30 they could have a Hulk on my side of the map, I'm gonna attack. Additionally, I see that he only just reached feudal age. And you'll know after they reach feudal age, if we swap to his vision, hey, a Hulk takes 45 seconds. So you can pretty much expect a Hulk on your side of the map, 15 seconds travel time on Boulder Bay, takes 45 to make, a minute after he reaches feudal. I now knew I was the upper dog on water, and therefore I immediately used my junks aggressively, forcing his fishing boats to run away, decimating his food economy, and dominating the waters. This game ends up being, as you can see, this game ends up being a 38-minute game, but I end up being the victor in it, in large part because I own and rule the seas. I'm now allowed to make more fishing boats if I so require. I'm allowed to start getting economy upgrade like fishing lines, extended lines, and I'm even going to transition into trading ships once I've built up the resources in order to set up trade routes to this neutral coastal trade post. I can take the sacred site anytime I want to, and this has basically set me up to be in a great spot. I'm walling off various parts of the map in order to defend myself against potential counter-aggression from Royal Knights. Now let me show you another game against a player where it inspired me to improve my water build. And why I need 3 galleys by the 6:30 mark. When I played against Kento on Boulder Bay, also a French player, I had more of a spitball, a loose build, where I didn't fine-tune everything, and there were several differences here. In this game, I also do a 2 on food and 4 on wood opener, as I kind of speed up this game so we can get to the relevant part. I'm gonna open up with a dock. A lot of elements are similar. but it shows that just adapting and kind of improvising can have different results. And I want you to pay special attention to the timing of my feudal, the timing of my opponent's feudal, when his hulks arrive in my base, the fact that I end up losing a villager to his scout and a wolf, I believe. That kind of sets me back as well, of course. But also the amount of fishing boats I end up making. Fishing boats cost wood, and one of the most big expenditures in food, as I slow down the replay to normal time again, 4:40 is when I can start Barbican of the Sun, and I kind of send my villagers quite far in order to make it in some kind of choice location, which will slow down my feudal. That's why I actually make it closer to the gold in the next game that I play, because I'm thinking, is this Barbican really gonna save me against cavalry run-bys? He could just go via here. Are the walls that I'm making here too early? Are some of these investments too much? Now we can see that he reaches feudal at 5:10, which is a lot quicker than my other opponent. That means he could have 2 hulks across the map by 6:10. If that happened with my other build, I would have 20 seconds where his hulks can attack my fishing boats, and then I would have 3 galleys to come out. So let's look at his vision, 3 junks to come out. He reached feudal very quickly, but he's only got a single dock. And I will tell you this, he can't reach feudal that quickly with 2 docks and be able to afford 2 expensive hulks. So while Kento is doing a variation here of a build order, if he really wanted to attack with 2 hulks, he would actually have to feudal later, not spend as much villagers to power build this, however many he used, and he would have 2 docks instead. So I'm confident that my opener can stop any amount of Hulk aggression. We see that his Hulk finishes at 6:15. It takes him 15, 20, 25 seconds to get across. And by the 6:30 mark, I would now have 3 galleys ready with the other build. However, in this particular rendition, not only am I 15 seconds late because I made 8 fishing boats, I optimized my economy different, I've got a food bank, I went for an early blacksmith, all kinds of investments that didn't purely lend itself to the perfect defense. And I'm gonna get 2 junks out, and I'm gonna show you how that actually performs. I don't have another junk out yet, and it's a 1v1 now. Now it's a 2v1. And that actually is not favorable. I take a little bit more damage, he doesn't take quite enough. And by the time his second Hulk comes out, especially with a boat for repair, I still only have 2. Now with my other build, by 7:30, I would have actually had 9 junks. No joke, I would have enough resources for 9 junks, and I would crush this Hulk army. Because 6:30 is 3, 7 minutes is 6, and 7:30 is 9. If you put all of your resources towards it, and don't waste resources on marketplace, blacksmith, or improper villager optimization. So that's the water opener. Take water control, then transition to dominate land as well. I should note that you do not have enough food to build an Imperial officer, and that's why I struggled more in this game as well. I went for 3 Imperial officers. You'll note that in the build order that I showed you, I don't make any because 2 food villagers cannot pay 100 food loan extra that the Imperial official costs compared to a villager. Hope you're gonna dominate water with this opener. And keep in mind one more thing. Balanced projectiles, the range damage technology, works on junks. Junks actually do 2 shots of 2 arrows, so a total of 4 shots per attack rotation every 2 seconds. They do 8 damage baseline. That's 6 on the ranged armor of a Hulk. That's 4 times 6 is 24. So you have 12 DPS per junk into a Hulk. And when you get the attack upgrade, that is increased. Instead of 24 damage, you do 28 damage. So you have a DPS of 19. 14. 14 instead of 12. And that is nice. So while the junk reads benefits from blacksmith upgrades, keep in mind that in the current build of the game, only ranged attack works on junks, and armor does not work, even though you would be fooled to believe that it does work. In this one I lost the water war and lost the game. In the other one I won the water war and won a longer game. Hope you're gonna dominate with this information, and GG GLHF.